Today I am here in no small measure because she was there.
Daughter-in-law to Sir Winston Churchill and the most famous courtesan of the 20th century, she became the mistress of men while they were married to other women. Many women dream of marrying a millionaire and wonder how Pamela Harriman did it, not just once, but 3 times, and along the way left a long string of very powerful and wealthy lovers. It is often said that behind every great man there is a woman, and what is often overlooked is that the woman behind Bill Clinton was Pamela Harriman. Although born into an aristocratic English family, the family's fortunes had significantly diminished. She saw that her chance of attaining prominence lay in influencing prominent men. Men, as she recognized quickly, controlled everything in those days, and the only way for a woman to get ahead in the world was through influencing those men with real power. Men were willing to jeopardize their relationships and careers to be with her. She loved men, and men loved her, and she knew how to please a man. She was able to focus on a man and make him feel that he was the most important man in the room. She could remember a favorite drink or make sure he was seated comfortably. One conquest said, she wasn't coquettish, just very sweet and charming and pretty. When involved romantically with a man, she paid extremely close attention to his desires, his preferences, and went to any lengths necessary to satisfy his needs during the affair. Pamela obviously took very good care of her men, and when they died, she got every dime. Randolph Churchill. She met Sir Winston Churchill's only son Randolph on a blind date, and he proposed to her on the very night they met. Pamela recognized the value of having the Churchill name, and she and Randolph were married on October 4th, 1939, when she was 19 years old. The Prime Minister often called upon Pamela to be the official hostess at political affairs. This gave her the opportunity to meet a variety of noted and notable persons. They produced a son, Winston, a year later. Randolph was already known as a hard-drinking gambler, abusive, and a womanizer who gambled away a fortune. In 1941, Randolph was sent to Cairo for military service, where he ran up large gambling debts and continued as a hard-drinking philanderer. But Pamela was not without her dalliances, too. During the war, she often stayed with her in-laws, meeting such prominent men as Charles de Gaulle, Emerald Cunard, and Averell Harriman. The couple divorced in 1944 after 5 years of marriage. William S. Paley. He and Pamela engaged in a brief wartime liaison. He was a wealthy businessman and broadcaster who built the Columbia Broadcast System, CBS, from a small radio network into one of the foremost radio and television operations in the U.S. He regularly entertained Lucille Ball, Grace Kelly, and David O. Selznick. Edward R. Murrow, an American journalist and pioneer of television news broadcasting. He returned to London after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 to do live reports. It was then in 1943 that he met, had an affair with, and fell in love with Pamela, who was still married to Randolph Churchill at the time. Pamela wanted to marry Edward R. Murrow, and he considered it. She followed him to the United States, but Murrow's wife at that time gave birth to their only child, and so he ended the affair and returned to his wife, and Pamela was alone again. Ali Khan. He was a prince and Pakistan's representative to the United Nations and was elected a vice president of the UN General Assembly. He served as chairman of the UN's Peace Observation Committee. He was a billionaire and was movie star Rita Hayworth's third husband. Pamela learned from him the technique of assuming a gaze of hypnotic interest when listening to the opposite sex. They became lovers in 1946 while he was still married. Meanwhile, Pam had already fallen in love with Gianni Agnelli. Gianni Agnelli. He and Pamela became lovers in 1948. He was a very wealthy Italian industrialist and principal shareholder in the Fiat Motor Company. He installed her in an apartment on the Avenue de New York with a handsome allowance, a Fiat, a Bentley, and a chauffeur. Pamela even took to speaking English with an Italian accent during their affair. She was determined to marry him, even embracing Roman Catholicism. But Gianni made it clear that marrying a divorced woman was out of the question. The affair lasted 5 years. Baron Elie de Rothschild. Conveniently, just before leaving Gianni Agnelli, she began her next relationship with Elie de Rothschild. He was a famous vintner, owner of Chateau Lafite Rothschild, and a wealthy aristocrat. And he was a married man. She met Elie in 1954 at a party in a Paris restaurant organized by some American bankers. She had hoped to marry him, but he never contemplated leaving his wife. They became lovers, and he provided her with a lavish lifestyle to which she had become accustomed. She was schooled in art history and winemaking during their affair, but she was spurned from official circles as a woman without a husband or official position. When the affair ended and she moved out of her Paris apartment, she took everything with her, including all of his antique furniture. Maurice Drouin. He was a noted writer, a French novelist, and a member of the Académie Française. He was a staunch defender of the purity of the French language. She carried on her relationship with Maurice during her affair with Elie de Rothschild. Stavros Niarchos. Also during this time, she began a relationship with Stavros Niarchos, a Greek shipping magnate. In 1952, he built the first oil supertanker. He was known as the Golden Greek. His shipping rival and brother-in-law was Aristotle Onassis. In 1956, the Suez Canal crisis created a demand for his ships and made him a billionaire. In 1989, he purchased Picasso's self-portrait, Yo Picasso, for $47,850,000. He and Pamela became lovers while he was married to his third wife. John Hay Jock Whitney. The U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom in 1958, and was one of the wealthiest men in the world. He inherited a $200 million trust fund when he was 22 when his father died. He later inherited $800 million in today's dollars from his mother. He was a backer of the film Gone with the Wind. He was prominent in New York's Café Society. He was still married to his wife Mary Elizabeth Altimus when he met Pamela. And Pamela was still married to Randolph Churchill when they had a wartime liaison. Alfonso de Portago. His complete name was Alfonso Antonio Vicente Eduardo Angel Blas Francisco de Borja Cabeza de Vaca y Leighton, Marquis of Portago, but was best known as Alfonso de Portago. He was the inheritor of the oldest title in Spain. He grew up in Biarritz and was an equestrian, bobsled runner, Olympic competitor, race car driver, and spoke 4 languages. Leland Hayward. She began her affair with Leland Hayward in 1959. She had given an ultimatum to Elie de Rothschild, and when it was rejected, she accepted Hayward's offer to move with him to New York. He was a married man and famous Broadway stage producer when they met. His accomplishments included South Pacific, The Sound of Music, Mr. Roberts, The Old Man and the Sea, and Gypsy. On the same day, after only hours of Hayward's divorce from his wife was final, Pamela became Mrs. Leland Hayward in a ceremony taking place in Carson City, Nevada in 1960. They maintained a lavish lifestyle and traveled in Hollywood circles. Their marriage lasted until Hayward's death in 1971. She was later accused by Hayward's children of grabbing all their father's money. Averell Harriman. Pamela was having a brief affair with Frank Sinatra when she heard that her wartime lover Averell Harriman's wife had died, and she was eager to reconnect to the man many consider the love of her life. He was fabulously wealthy, good-looking, and an international polo player. He was President Roosevelt's special envoy to England and later ambassador to Moscow. In the 30 years since their wartime affair, Harriman had run twice for president, been elected governor of New York, and served as a top advisor to Presidents John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. In 1909, Averill inherited a fortune from his father, who owned the Union Pacific Railroad and Wells Fargo. He immersed himself in American Democratic politics. One day after Pamela's husband Leland Hayward died, she began her affair with Averill, and 6 months later they were married. Averill was almost 80 at the time and 28 years her senior. Pamela threw herself into seeing to Averill's every need, maintaining beautiful homes in Barbados, the Virginia Hunt Country, and in Georgetown. They were married until his death in 1986, at which time Pamela inherited $115 million. Her inheritance included a West Wind private jet and properties Willow Oaks, 414 acres of Ardennes real estate, including horse stables, Sands Point acreage, Birch Grove, $1 million Sun Valley cottage, 5 homes, a $50 million art collection, and $10 million in cash. In less than 10 years, however, she had spent so much of it that Harriman's heirs sued her. Significant legal problems with Harriman's children would lead to significant financial problems for Pamela for the rest of her life. She became a catalyst and focal point for the Democratic Party, hosting dinner parties and attracting a who's who list of prominent party members. She created PAMPAC, a political action committee that raised money for Democratic candidates. She had a knack for getting people to give money and feel ennobled for doing so. She had reinvented herself as a mover and shaker in the Democratic Party. She spoke at the 1984 Democratic Convention supporting Michael Dukakis and Al Gore's 1992 presidential campaign. She then turned her attention to a young governor from Arkansas, Bill Clinton, and when he won the party's nomination, she raised $12 million for the upcoming election. Her reward for her constant and significant support was the ambassadorship to France. President Clinton appointed her U.S. ambassador to France in 1993.
She was one of the easiest choices I made for any appointment when I became president.
Pamela Harriman died of a stroke in Paris in February 1997. President Clinton dispatched Air Force One to bring her body home, and he spoke at her funeral in 1997 at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C.
We gather in tribute to Pamela Harriman, patriot and public servant, American ambassador and citizen of the world. I will never forget how she was there for Hillary and for me in 1992.
The funeral was attended by President Clinton, Al Gore, and more than 1,000 people, including numerous world leaders who mourned her passing. Pamela Digby Churchill Haywood Harriman, 20th century courtesan.